What is your writing process like? Do you write alone? Do you like to sit alone? Do you write with them around you? Like, how do you write?
I like to write alone, but I'm not afraid to write in a crowded room if it's flowing. I think the number one thing is just to write. If you go sit down and listen to music and get a piece of paper and a pencil, or however you write, something's going to happen. Something always happens. Sometimes it's better than others, but if you make that time to write, something's going to happen. Or if you have an idea, no matter where you are, on a plane, riding a bike, sound asleep, you better get the fuck up and put that idea down, because that could be it. If it came to you, it means something.
Do you feel like you are still a role model for a lot of younger people?
Most probably, but it's not something that, I bear in mind while making decisions or just daily while making music. It's not something I think about, but I understand that, I possibly could be someone's idol.
I wish I could be altruistic and say, no, it's just for the moment. But I would like to feel, especially in music, I would love to feel that what I did actually changed the fabric of music. And I think I've been very fortunate that I've actually seen it happen within my lifetime. I mean, I've seen music, modern music, change so dramatically over the last 25 years. And I've got a fairly shrewd idea of how much, say, myself and Brian Eno had to do with changing aspects of it, and I'm sure many people from my generation. Because it's such a fast event horizon in popular music. Many of us have been able to see the changes that we've made, from the Stones to name anybody you would want to, really. And so that's pretty satisfying, because we've seen it happen.
When you become a hugely successful musician and your life becomes touring, big arenas, doing radio shows, getting on the bus, getting on the plane, all this stuff, does it make it difficult to have like the time or the actual experiences to continue to create?
Yes, because you get so deoxygenated in the bubble that you start writing songs about being on tour.
Yeah, like comedians will tell jokes about airline food. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You end up becoming sort of like, you're trying to take people in the insularity of your experience, but it's not that interesting.
Right.
And at some point it becomes unrelatable.
Well, I always said that about, like, there's a lot of bands, but some of the great Allman Brothers or Leonard Skinner, they had a bunch of songs about leaving, about getting away from women, Lord, I was born a rambling man.
Rightly so, yeah.
There was so many songs about just getting away from women.
And I've got, some offers to do acting stuff. Even recently, I've got a script there I need to read. But I never read scripts. Nah. But
Would you be more of like an evil villain or like a heartthrob?
I think what it is, if I'm going to do that, I'm not just going to play like a character like myself, and I don't want to play the cliche role. In Upside Video, I played a little boxer thing, and people thought, hey.
Yeah, the music business plays this Jedi mind trick on you where the whole thing's set up to be rapacious and take advantage of your weakness.
How so?
Well, I'll use the music business as an example, and I'm sure there's plenty of parallels across the entertainment spectrum. You struggle to get the contract, and then the contract is sort of, the indentured servitude type of thing. Our first contract was 7 albums, essentially 14 years. So I signed that contract when I was 23.
That's crazy.
Okay, so at 23 years old, I'm signing a contract that's supposed to take me into 37.
You're signing a contract for more than half your life.
And if you look at the shelf life of most artists, it's 4 to... So they're basically anticipating your entire arc.
That's so crazy.
So you don't have any leverage, other than that they want to sign you. You sign the deal, and then it becomes this weird dance of like, can I sustain success? If you get success and you have leverage, they'll get out of your way because you're making them a lot of money. But the minute you're not making them as much money, then they step in and they start playing these Jedi mind tricks on you.
The way that I work, I will either be extraordinarily accepted, or otherwise I reach a point where I've got 7 people listening to what I do. I mean, there's never in between, at least. And it's been like that all my life, people have either really accepted what I do, or they absolutely sort of push it away from them. And I guess I've gotten used to that, and that's I guess that's what I am, Sometimes I'm useful currency, and other times I'm not.
So many great artists are a prisoner of their early success in a lot of ways.
And rightly so. You know what I mean? I have a much greater appreciation for the zeitgeist effect of the public. I don't know if that makes any sense. It's like, how many zeitgeists did Elvis have? 3. U2's had 2 or 3. Frank Sinatra had 2 or 3 or 4. I mean, there's something about when it all seems to make sense, like the public's fascination, the artist's place in time, the work that's being created. There's a sense of like familiarity, but also something is happening and everybody wants to take part in it. And so I have a much greater appreciation for that moment. The ego of the artist wants to convince yourself that you're always in that moment. And that's just impossible. That's just impossible. There's just no way. It's just the cyclical nature of creation.
That's such an important thing to say for people listening, for people that like struggle with this themselves. To hear someone like you say that.
Yeah, it's actually kind of makes sense. A typical example, it's like falling in love and expecting to feel that feeling forever.
Right.
It's just not going to happen.
You're not going to feel the same.
I like to sit on my back porch with a boombox and play today's rehearsal and just sit there and write. And I owe some of that to my father, who kind of implanted that in me. The writing, the creativity, understanding words. But probably the most powerful thing that you could ever write is something that's honest. So playful is fun, intellectual is fun, interesting is fun. But when you crack into that emotional thing where it hurts, or just one of those moments of honesty, that's perhaps the most valuable. They'll come to band practice and they'll say, what do you think about this? Be like, I love that. And I think I know what to do with that. And it starts there. And Chad knows what to do. And we just build together. Or I'll come in and I'll say, I have these words. They're looking for a home. What do you think? And John is exquisite at listening to what I'm doing. And, I kind of feel like I'm surrounded by geniuses and I'm a little bit of the idiot, but he's good at deciphering the idiot's genius. So he listens to me and he's like, I know what to put with that. And then it just grows.
So did you feel it while it was happening? Like when you're doing these mega tours and everything, do you feel like the staleness in the creation?
I did.
Yeah.
I think what I tried to do is change personalities, change musical directions to kind of reinfuse things. And it worked up until a point, until my mother died, like in '96. In a weird 3-month period, the drummer left the band, my mother died, and I got a divorce in like a 6-month period. I tried to use that as fuel to sort of pivot where I wanted to go musically, but I wrote this very introspective, dark record, which a lot of people really like now, but at the time it was like so antithetical to this big rock machine. I was like castigated for being an idiot, and I went from golden child to idiot, in one fell swoop. And
I guess it's all about communication in some ways. How do you communicate those deepermost feelings that are probably fairly hard to articulate?
That's the kind of music I think that resonates with people the most. I mean, people love all kinds of music, right? But there's something about when you know that an artist is saying something that comes from the deepest part of their being. Like there's like some reality to what they're singing about. It at least represents some reality of what they're singing about, that it's a part of them, that it excites people so much because you're sharing something. You're sharing like a part of your soul. You're sharing a part of your life experience. You're sharing a part of your personality. And you're doing so through your writing. You're doing so through your singing.
It resonates. We're all connected.
Yeah.
And when people are like, I know that feeling. I want to experience this guy's version of that feeling. I'm connected to that.
Yeah, it's got to be quite a mind fuck to create something and then practice it and rehearse it over and over again and tweak it and mess with it and not know really, like almost not be able to be objective anymore.
Yeah, well, the weird thing is I hope people can appreciate how I mean it, is like at one point I was able to do that. I was both able to be objective and subjective, be the writer and be the producer.
Right.
And I hit a lot of home runs. So then you get kind of like, I know what I'm doing.
Right.
So then when it stops working, you have 2 choices. You can blame yourself, which is the natural thing you should do, or you can blame others. And once you start blaming others, now you're in this hall of mirrors, Instead of raising your hand and saying, okay, I've had a good run. Now it's like getting a coach or something. Like maybe a guy goes on a losing streak and needs to bring in a new coach to say, I think you need to work on your offense. You know what I mean? Just somebody to tweak you. But when you're flying 1,000 miles an hour and you're selling gazillions of records and making all this money and you're surrounded by a bunch of sycophants, they're not going to tell you, hey man, you need the doctor to come in and kind of sort your head out.
Can you remember like one really mad moment, like maybe the maddest thing you've ever done?
I told you that because hey, those mad things.
Was it? It must have been really mad. I think it's secret business.
So what is the creative process like when you guys make a song? Do they have the music first? Do you have the lyrics first? Is it a combination of the two?
Zero rules.
Zero rules.
Zero rules, and it happens every which way, and it could be anything. Like, as the Red Hot Chili Peppers don't have it's got to sound like this, or it's got to sound like that. It's got to be hard, or it could be anything. It could be funky. It could be bluesy. It could be jazzy. It could be hip hop. It could be folk. We'll play anything. Anything that we feel like playing, which is also a blessing because less boxed in. But often John and Flea will stay home and go to their garage or their room or whatever and just play until they have something, a tidbit, a chord progression, a rhythm, a melody, because that's what they like to do for hours.
I definitely let my hair down. Don't really go out too much though, to be fair. I don't really do the circuit again. But when we do our shows, we have fun. I ain't gonna lie, we have our fun.
Yeah, you're in the room, but we're the arbiter of whether you can stay in the room.
That's the weird position that record companies had for a long time that they don't seem to have anymore.
I would argue against that because
they still do.
Well, they've moved to a different set of circumstances, and I'm not as conversant as I once was. But one thing they do with certain younger artists, but I think particularly more in the pop realm, is they do these 360 deals where it's like,
right.
If you get a perfume deal, like your whole world,
they own you.
We own a piece of your whole world. And fame is such a great quotient in American life now that you can see where kids would trade fame and be willing to give away like the profit part.
If I found myself in some kind of cul-de-sac in the music, I'd break down the problem by actually painting it. I'd try and visualize what the problem was, that the sense of these textures were grating against each other in a way that wasn't admirable. And I try and visualize those textures and paint them and then find out what was wrong. And then when I'd solve that problem, I'd take it back into the studio. I've never really compartmentalized things. Everything for me is just this flux of doing stuff. Some of it's music and some of it's visual. And the two have always been very entwined.
Well, the mind fuck of music to me has always been very fascinating because you guys create it in like a vacuum almost.
Totally.
And then you bring it to the people. Like when you release an album, they get it and it's done. It's like, holy shit, here it is. And a big fan plays it for the first time and they're listening to it. They're like, oh. Whereas we have ideas and I need an audience to create. Like I need to be around them. I can only create so much on a laptop. Most of it has to be like fine-tuned and refined. So by the time I record something, I already know it works.
Yeah.
It's already been tested.
Right. So go back to my point. If you get on a winning streak and you're creating things in a bubble and then they work, well, then you want to take all the credit for it.
Yeah.
You forget all the 1,000 hours in the bedroom that you listen to Jimi Hendrix or, Bauhaus or Merciful Fate or whatever, like that gave you all these ideas. You don't want to give them credit. You want to be the author of your own success.
I don't really do those things too often, but when I hear a track that I like, I think, yeah, let me get an instrumental for it. I called Ghetto up and I was like, yeah, I need that now. And he sent it to me and I just done it, straight away. We put it out quickly.
Wowzers. And how do you feel about the reaction it's got?
From what I hear, it's cool. I mean, it's good. A lot of people like to hear me spit like that. Obviously, that's vintage Kano, I guess. I couldn't just make an album full of always hype things or one style of spitting. I have to really, experiment with flows, switch it up and flow, create a flow for what's right for the song that I'm working on. So it's always about the song when I'm recording,
So this movie's about this guy who made these albums. He made an album in the 70s, made some recordings. And they didn't take off over here in America, but people were playing them in South Africa. And in South Africa, this guy was gigantic. And there was all these rumors about him being dead. And meanwhile, the guy was in America doing construction work. He was like a laborer.
Really?
Yes. So then all of a sudden they find him. What is his name? It says it right there. Just scroll up.
Oh, Rodriguez.
Rodriguez. So this guy doesn't know that he's a fucking huge star in South Africa. And they find him, and then they bring him to South Africa to do a concert. And it's fucking bananas.
I couldn't accept that I got on a losing streak and then, go to somebody like Rick and say, hey, I need some help. I need some objective help.
Did you feel yourself, like when you were listening to the music that you were creating, did you feel like you were on a losing streak?
No.
So it sounded...
I couldn't intellectually understand why I was failing. It didn't make any sense to me. And sometimes it's just generational. It's the market changes, whatever. It's not personal.
Right.
It feels incredibly personal, which is why it's easier to blame somebody else.
Right.
Like, you don't understand the depth of my work here. I'm so deep, and you're not following my meta path or something. You know what I mean? And look, it's most entertainment is popular, right? I mean, you're a comedian. I mean, it's like if you get up and tell a bunch of jokes and the audience doesn't laugh, whose fault is it?
Yes, never play to the gallery. I think, but you never learn that until much later on, I think. But never work for other people at what you do. Always remember that the reason that you initially started working was that there was something inside yourself that you felt that if you could manifest it in some way, you would understand more about yourself and how you coexist with the rest of society. And I think it's terribly dangerous for an artist to fulfill other people's expectations. I think they generally produce their worst work when they do that. And if the other thing I would say is that if you feel safe in the area that you're working in, you're not working in the right area. Always go a little further into the water than you feel you're capable of being in. Go a little bit out of your depth. And when you don't feel that your feet are quite touching the bottom, you're just about in the right place to do something exciting.
Club bangers, was that kind of something that you were thinking about when you were penning the new album?
No, not really. I definitely didn't really think about the clubs, although I think I've probably got 2 songs that would really work in clubs, One of them is Get Wild, and one of them is another one called Crazy.
When somebody breaks out of the sort of the matrix of how the game is set up,
right,
it creates this weird thing.
Yeah, and there are a few today, though, that have kind of figured it out through YouTube and all these different online...
I think Chance the Rapper, I don't know much about his business, but I know he's sort of worked out this other model for himself.
Yeah, Jamie knows a lot about him.
I know he's getting money from way other places than just the traditional record contracts.
God bless him.
He's got big deals from major companies like Sprite and other.
And he's still independent, right? Technically?
That's the word they would use to market him. Like, he's an independent artist, but he's got a machine behind him. So I don't know if he's independent,
Yeah, I'm good friends with Sturgill Simpson, and Sturgill's tried to educate me as to how the record business keeps people in the fold with the owning your merchandise and your likeness forever and all these different things. It seems crazy.
The hardest of the hard, the gangsters of LA. I'll be riding down the Sunset Boulevard, and I'll hear Under the Bridge coming out of a lowrider, and it is the toughest, scariest, most loked out looking dudes just melting with Under the Bridge. I'm like, okay, that was a day well spent writing that song.
Do you always close with that song, or do you guys mix up your playlist?
We mix it up, but yeah, it's a meaningful tune. It has stood the test of time.
When you guys closed with it the other night, I was like, yeah, you kind of have to.
I owe a lot of that to Rick Rubin, that song.
He's amazing, isn't he?
He's all right.
What a trip.
He's all right.
He's such an unusual
For
person.
a beginner, he's pretty good.
We actually signed a clause, and it said, and this contract pertains to this universe and any universe not yet discovered.
What?
We signed that clause.
Who wrote that?
the record company.
Jesus fucking, what are they, Scientology? That is crazy.
Like, we literally had to sign a thing, and it was like, this contract pertains to this known universe and any universe not yet discovered.
That is insane. Like, if someone found a parallel universe somewhere and they figured out they could sell music to them, they haven't heard the Smashing Pumpkins, get over there quick. Shoot a rocket ship filled with cash over there.
Well, that, you know why they put that in is because when they transitioned to CDs, the contracts didn't account for CDs.
Oh.
And what they did, it's a very classic thing, is so they had to go back and renegotiate all the deals because of the CD technology. This would have been like whatever 80s. So they went to every artist and they said, look, it's this new technology and we're not sure it's going to work. We're only going to pay you 75 cents on the dollar so we could advance the new technology.
Oh, Jesus Christ, they're dirty.
It's going to affect me, whether I like it or not. I'm going to be pained by the people that don't like it, and I'm going to be bolstered by people who do like it. What it won't do is change the way that I work, which is probably the most important thing. But whatever I hear, and people will insist on sending me any criticism, I'll get over it fairly quickly. I'm not thick-skinned, but I'm not thin-skinned either. But I've gotten used to the fact that you just can't please all the people all the time. And I've got no great desire to be loved in a major way by faceless, anonymous crowds. It doesn't really, it's not part of something that I want.
If you actually survive the cut, let's call it phase one. You're successful, you're a name, and now you're in a place to either renegotiate or your deal is up or whatever. I once had a conversation with a very powerful music executive, and I said, and I was friends with the guy, so I was like, give me the insider psychology here. Now that I know the game that you run, what do you tell people like me when they get here? And he says, oh, it's just, there's always a price. So they know that even if you get through the matrix of the whole thing, and get out the other side, that there's just a dollar amount that will buy you back in.
Whoa. They're
not worried that you'll go independent. And in fact, if you look at a lot of the machinations of the music business over the last 20 years, especially with the rise of the internet, it's to keep people in the system.
Yes.
They don't want true independence.
It was a fucking huge star in another country, and he had no idea. And that this is the movie about like him going on stage. It brought me to tears, man. It brought me to tears. When he went on stage, it's like, holy shit, what is that like for him?
Yeah.
This guy had no idea.
That's crazy.
It's like he's
man.
living in
How
a
do you even go
dream.
do a show? How do you even go do a show?
How do you do a show?
I can't do a fucking show, and I know that there's people coming. Like, I
Right.
can't even fucking do a show, and like...
He's believed to have sold more records in South Africa than Elvis Presley.
That's crazy.
Insane.
Sixto Rodriguez is his name.
Wow.
They're trying to take on YouTube now because YouTube's got this weird, funky position where they'll pay on licensed music, but they won't pay for covers. And you know what I mean? Like
Yes.
YouTube's like one of the big targets of the business because whatever deal they agreed to with YouTube 10 years ago was super weak. But again, these are all machinations that go on above the artist's spot.
Right.
And quick thing into your world, when McGregor leapt out and did the fight with Mayweather, he creates this whole different set of dynamics because he can run his own game.
Yes.
UFC can't pay him that kind of money. And last I heard is like maybe he's going to do another fight. So I don't want to get totally into that. But my point is you see where those dynamics where people step outside the system, it changes the game.
Yeah.
That's fucking crazy. I gotta look into fucking
think-
Rodriguez. What a
I think
fucking
the
legend.
guy wound up giving all his money away too. He's kind of, I mean, maybe that might be one of them legend stories. I tell a lot of those, unfortunately. They don't turn out to be true. I hear a lot of legends, and I just fucking repeat them ad nauseum. But I think the thing about him was people said that he had given his money away, and that he just kind of went back to a simple life and stopped performing. You know, maybe he experienced it in the documentary and all the heat and all the attention. And he's like, yeah, you know what? I'm an older man now, and I'm not interested in this anymore. I was interested in this when I was a young man, and now
I
maybe
just want to chill.
yeah, and like he fucking knows he did it now. At least like, wow, people enjoyed it, and it's
Yeah.
really good, man.
Yeah.
It's crazy songs that can slip through. That like people like, how was that not like you find out a song from 1969? You're like, how is that not a fucking smash hit?
Yeah.
Do you ever heard of Johnny Thunder?
No, sir.
Play I'm Alive.
And I think the public has shown over time the willingness and the ability to follow artists if they're willing, if they're able to go to that place where they mine out something new that actually is like a cultural contribution and not just sort of more of what they already know.
I think that's so important for you to talk about. I'm so glad you do, because for upcoming artists and in all sorts of genres, just people who are involved in creating, to hear someone as successful as yourself talk about the various struggles of the mind and of momentum and the different stages and various points of your career.
Yeah.
It's so important.
I think the difference that most artists have, the ones that I come across, we tend to think our opinions are a lot more important than other people's in some way. That often we feel as though we have the key to something. I don't think that we do at all. I just think we dwell on it more. We tend to look at the world as some usable substance more than a non-artist would. I think for many people, just getting through life is enough. That's a big enough task, but let alone having to look at the world and the universe and say, now, if I had my way, you know.
Look no further than the deals that the record labels cut with the streaming services. They got into ownership equity deals with the streaming services in arrangement for them to have an equity position. They agreed to very low rates for the artist's music.
Oh, so that's
So when
why.
you listen to Bob Dylan's song on Spotify, Bob Dylan's not getting a lot of money for that. But as Spotify and the other streaming services raise up in their equity position, the labels benefit. So the labels pimped out their own artist to take a greater equity position in a rising business. It's like they
did
weaken
it-
the artist's position to take a better position at the table themselves.
That is fascinating.